So is this the day? Is this the Aston that finally brings it to Ferrari? With circa 665 horsepower, super trick Bilstein DTX suspension, 6-axis inertia control and a rapid shift ZF 8-speed gearbox, all tied together with a new proprietary infotainment system, Aston has its sights set firmly on Maranello. All right, so once again, pretty top-line observation. Looks awesome again.
Yeah, big
Got
change
that part
at the
down.
front. New face for this next generation of sports cars, and I think a big change in the presence and stance for new Vantage.
It's quite a bit wider.
Yeah.
It's got presence, this thing.
Yeah, so wide body on this car, 30mm wider track, which takes us forward a lot in terms of handling as well.
Yes.
But yeah, real presence when you look at the car.
So I'm guessing while this front fascia looks better, that's a functional intake now, is it? That is, you need more air for what's under there.
Absolutely, yeah. So massive step up in performance and yeah, a grille and cooling system to match. So we've got a huge metal grille. We always use metal, as you know. Materials are vitally important with all Astons. A lot of cooling packed right to the outer edges as well, and you can see through into the radiators on either side. So the main cooling for the engine, but also HVAC and transmission as well. So up massively, we're 30% up on air intake through the grille.
30%.
But, huge difference in the required cooling because of the power that sits underneath.
Okay, so come on, where are you?
So huge step forward. So we're 665 PS with new Vantage.
Are you serious?
With all the
That's
sports
massive.
cars, now we want to be top of the class for power. So we go ahead of everything else in the class, ahead of 911 Turbo S and the AMG products. And that's really where we want to be. To do that requires quite a lot of work on the drivetrain,
Yes.
cooling, and then of course harnessing it to get the power on the road.
So even though this is a wider platform, I mean, touching on cooling, it's still a tight space in there for a pretty substantial engine. How's that journey been from extracting power, keeping it cooler in a tighter platform?
Yeah, lots of change. Mostly we can manage it through the front. Obviously a wider body gives us more cooling sort of real estate to work with. We've moved the vents on the hood inboard, so they're now above the hot V. The engine sits a long way back in this car, so you've got a lot of heat quite far back. You've got a lot of radiator space at the front to try and manage that on the way into the engine. And on the outer part of this, you've also got air intakes feeding the brakes as well. So there's a lot of technical work at the front of the car. But yes, on the engine itself, a huge sort of development program to take it on from where we were before. 515 PS up to 665 is a massitive step in one generation.
It's huge.
Yeah, it's huge.
Crikey. What are your torque levels then, if your horsepower's up there?
800 Newton meters.
Just under 600-ish pounds-feet of torque.
Yeah, so it's huge.
Crikey.
Again, harnessing that, so we're a classic sports car design, front engine, rear wheel drive, 50-50 weight distribution. So the perfect setup really, and a huge amount of power and torque to handle.
Aesthetically, looks awesome. Is this your sort of new design language going forward? Because it's got DB12 in it, but clearly as a whole package it is Vantage.
Yeah, I think the great thing with Vantage is you've got this sort of powerful nose stretching out, and with this new face in particular, we've also got this kind of snub rear, so it's very short rear overhang. The styling is unmistakably Vantage, but there's kind of shades of some of the sort of greatest hits. 177 is particularly prevalent in this car, in some of the language. But overall, we wanted to give the car more presence in the rearview mirror because of the sheer level of power we've given this new car.
So on that, one word that I've picked up on since there's been murmurings of this car out there is that it's going to be a true hooligan. Talk to me about this, because when I read that I was like, these guys are on track, right?
Yeah, it is a hooligan. It's 100mm shorter wheelbase than DB12.
Yeah.
Near enough the same sort of power levels. Obviously we've got the wider track, so it's perfectly set up for a car that's going to put enormous smiles on faces. And when we talk about being a hooligan, it's just the sheer level of power in our most compact platform. But what we have in terms of the systems underpinning the chassis, the new drive systems, is a precision tool, particularly the front end. One of the things that's kind of increasingly hard to find on the market is this level of power in a supercar without a driven front axle. So we have a very pure front axle, obviously rear wheel drive.
Yeah.
So we're harnessing all that power into a very precise feeling, particularly on the front end on the steering.
Does this have the trick carryover Bilsteins that you developed for 12?
Yes, it does, yeah.
So I remember when we did the walk and talk around DB12, when it was the static unveiling, and you were telling me about this disc trick suspension, 6-axis of control. And I remember carrying your words into the first drive. You can't capture the difference in driving dynamics and platform. From DB11 to 12, it is, I mean, it's a rocket ship. It's a completely different world.
Yeah.
You've taken that tech and applied it here.
Yeah, and I think in this car, the breadth of that technology comes through because we want something really sharp. Again, we've stiffened this car from the old Vantage, particularly across the rear. So between the top of the two rear dampers, it's over 30% stiffer.
Right.
That allows the dampers then to be more pure and true in their actions. So we've really pinned the rear down, particularly in this car versus the previous generation. So it's a very flat, stable platform. The Bilstein DTX system just has huge breadth of capability, so has a kind of expensive feel to the ride quality, but then when you throw it at corners, it's tremendously fun, very natural. The car rotates underneath you, and this car in particular, the setup is there to put smiles on faces. It's fun at low speed, it's really fun at high speed. You know, it's got that breadth. It's incredible technology, but the best bit is its ability for us to be malleable, to work with it in the way we want to. So
you're back with the Michelin Pilot Sports. Last time they were developed for DB12. Are these developed for Vantage? So it's specifically to this car?
We've again, with this adaptation of the tyre, so the tyre was developed for the platform.
That's very cool.
So we've got a great partner in Michelin on this program. This is a huge part of what's sort of allowed us to access. It's obviously it's the contact point, right? It's where we put it down on the road. And it's given us a chance really to draw everything out of the chassis in a way that we couldn't do.
But it's not to be underestimated what a job it is to, and frankly, an investment it is, to develop a tyre specifically for a platform is very different than having a tyre which works on a platform.
Yeah, absolutely. And particularly now, cars have very different characteristics and you're working right at the edge of the capability of the tyres. So finding that extra 1-2% through the compound and through the tread patterns and so on, stiffness of the sidewall, it makes a huge difference to the way your car, your brand, can execute and be different in the market.
Brilliant. So this particular car, optioned with carbon ceramics, is it an option?
Yes. And again, we have a mix of consumer preferences on that. This is the car that, for Aston drivers, most people would take to the track.
Right.
So of all our cars, this is the one that goes to the track.
Do you have a ballpark figure as to what the car weighs?
Just over 1,600, so
1,600-ish. I mean, with that amount of power and torque, that's no joke. That's pretty serious.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, cars are getting heavier these days.
Yeah. And frankly, it's no fault of the brand.
No. With the requirements for, particularly for safety and emissions equipment and so on, there's mass coming into all cars. We've reduced the unsprung mass through much lighter wheels and obviously the carbon brakes. The overall mass is roughly comparable with the previous Vantage, but we've got a lot more power.
So previous Vantage, obviously that already had an EDIF. I'm assuming this is a whole new calibration of that.
Yeah, it's a similar system, so it's an EDIF system. The previous car had that. Where this EDIF is different is that it's part of the integrated chassis control. So with that Bilstein system, so it's working in tandem with those 6-axis accelerometers, and obviously we've got a much more advanced traction control system on the car, much more powerful software driving that. So overall, the difference really with this EDIF is it's more powerful and more effective, but you feel its introduction less, it's more natural. So when the car rotates, you can really let it breathe with it. And obviously it's got, as from DB12, this kind of 10-stage slip control, which really allows you to have some fun, but in controlled conditions.
One of the things I was really impressed with DB12 was the amount of power that it actually translates to the tarmac.
Yeah.
I mean, historically, the previous gen DBS, unless it was dry and nice, it was a bit of a job finding traction. In 12, it was unbelievable. The application of power is all there. I'm assuming learnings from that are in here.
Yeah, and I would say even more so in Vantage. I mean, this new generation of sports cars is one of the biggest targets was that stability at high speed and taking the engine power onto the road. Because obviously with twin turbo engines, you have these huge slugs of torque. The two things that made a huge difference, apart from all the chassis stuff we talked about, is the tyres, but also torque shaping through the transmission system, which again we've deployed here. We've got a shorter final drive ratio, but by allowing the torque to rise in each gear, you get that sort of accelerating sense of acceleration, if you like. It never ends. It feels like the car's getting quicker at a faster rate.
So it sort of feeds and blends it through the curve rather than giving it all to you.
Yeah,
as it were. Yeah.
You know that typical kind of slip road situation where you pin the throttle and it drops a couple of cogs and you light the wheels up.
Yes.
Absolutely didn't want that in this next generation. We have to be more precise with the way power goes down, and that's this new transmission helps us do that.
ZF.
Yep.
8-speed.
New version of that, much faster shifting, particularly on downshifts, which is between that and kind of typical dual clutches. That tends to be where the gap opens up on downshift rather than up. We've sped that up a lot, and I think if you look at particularly in the drive mode. So this car, within the software has Sport Plus and Track, and that part of that is the gearbox cowl. In particular, in Sport, you've got this level of engagement where you get the torque cut in between ratios much more like a dual clutch. You feel this rapid shift, but also when the gear hits,
you get a sense
it pings you forward
of
again.
Actuation, as it were, as well.
Yeah. So that's Sport's really the sweet spot for where people would enjoy the car on the road. The other aspect of this car that's very distinct from DB12 in particular is the subframe, the way the chassis is set up. So DB12 has the what we call an isolated subframe, so you get some compliance through the car, particularly for a Grand Tourer. That's desirable. You've got a longer wheelbase, so the car's breathing sort of vertically a lot more. This is much more pinned. That isolation on the subframe isn't there, so the way we construct the car is different.
Right.
That makes it much more direct, and really is the connection with, this is the car that we go GT racing in, of course. And
of course, yeah.
Today we also launched the GT3, endurance race car version of this car, and the two were developed side by side, and that chassis in particular is one of the key areas in which this is a true sports car compared to the DB12 as a Grand Tourer.
Brilliant. Well, let's check out inside, because I'm pretty confident one of the major upgrades is what I can see in there. I know you launched this effectively last year, Alex, but I shall never tire of getting in an Aston with a proprietary infotainment system, nice touchscreen, Apple CarPlay. It has to be a game changer for you, surely.
Yeah, and obviously with DB12 in the market now, customer reaction's been fantastic. HMI should be a kind of silent partner in a supercar. Really, you're here for the drive. Yeah. But if it can do that, it can be efficient in its operations. Touchscreen is a huge part of that. Speed of response is a huge part of that, and clarity of display. So I think the system's gone down very favourably with the customers and with new customers coming into Aston. So it's a huge step change for us.
That's something that's quite difficult to convey on camera, but when we were driving DB12, the response time, lack of lag as it were, in the reaction from that screen, it felt damn near iPhone, which is an impressive task in itself.
Yeah, I mean, this is the highest resolution screen fitted in automotive at the moment, so we're trying to get as close to that kind of smartphone experience as you would expect. We definitely have a kind of design view that the world is fast reaching peak screen. The screens adorning the entire cabin, it's possible, but you run out of things to display that's not necessarily useful. Actually, it's just black plastic. It's not very luxury. So there's enough technology here for you to interact with the car, very clear display, but equally then all the switchgear is, milled from solid metal and nice to touch, tinted carbon trims and so on. It's all part of it being an Aston Martin, as well as being, digital and kind of future facing as well.
It shouldn't be underestimated in this day and age what a luxury it is to have a button that gets straight to the point and not found in a sub-menu of a sub-menu. That's nice.
And we tried a lot of systems. It's fast becoming dangerous, kind of 3 or 4 presses of a screen when you're driving to try and change the temperature of the HVAC. So we said, direct access to HVAC, to media, and more importantly to drive modes. So, the wheel that can change through the modes. As I say, we've got Sport, Sport Plus, and Track. We've got individual here where you can blend the settings, and crucially also a wet mode. With all this power and so on, we've got a mode where you can dial it back and kind of look after the car where traction is less available, which again is a great feature, and it allows the rest of the modes to be more dynamic and extreme because you've got that safety net at the bottom.
Styling wise, it is a bigger departure from DB12 than I thought it might be. It's very suggestive that this is a lot more sporty environment, and it's straight away.
Yep, so steeper raked, a narrower centre console, more kind of elbow room for sawing away at the wheel, different housing for the instrument panel, so altogether a more kind of dynamic cabin that's kind of wrapped around the driver. The investment was significant. A lot of work has gone in, and it takes, software takes millions of iterations and a lot of patience. You can finish the car well ahead of the software.
Right.
And so, but what it gives us is a great basis, over-the-air updates as well, so we can bring new features, improve the system consistently over time.
Well, I'm led to believe a drive is a few months away, which I'm very much looking forward to. I think DB12 gave us a sort of flavour of what this might be like, but I'm looking forward to that. Shorter final drive, shorter wheelbase, slightly less weight.
Yep, absolutely.
Sounds cool.
It's magnificent. You'll be amazed by the car. The dynamic ability is incredible. We have a very clear ambition. We want to be at the top for performance and dynamics in each category that we're in. We've done that with DB12. Sports car is a tougher segment. We know the big players in there in terms of the dynamic platform, but we have an incredibly capable car, and I think you're going to love it.
Fabulous. Thanks very much. What have been the challenges or development journey to get that much more horsepower out of this? Were there any sort of thermal issues, because it's still quite a tight space? I mean, it's really impressive how far back that sits.
Yeah. Its location in the car obviously is shaped by what we wanted out of the dynamics. The car's actually got perfect 50-50 weight distribution. In terms of the actual hardware choices we made for the engine, we really went through every element of the engine's systems and picked what was best for this perfect balance of power, which was a massive uptick in performance as well as responsiveness. It's our light car. We needed it to be reactive as well as brutally powerful. So the hardware choices we made, we changed the turbos, we changed the inlet tracks, the inlet runners, camshafts. The block is even different to the previous generation car.
Wow. Oh, so it's a big change then.
Yeah, it has different breathing systems to the previous car. What we did seek to preserve was the gear ratios, liked the spacing relative between the gears, but we brought the speed through the rev range up by shortening the final drive, so your sense of acceleration is amplified, building upon the extra power we've got.
Right, so not only have you put more power into it, you've also simulated it further by having a shorter final drive.
Absolutely, yeah, so we're up 30% on power and 15% on torque, so it's significant.
That's no joke, that's a big step up, isn't it? When I came here, I didn't expect the numbers to be that high on this, considering that this is effectively your entry level point of this car.
Yeah, this is our base car.
Yeah, exactly, that to me is kind of nuts. Like, you would expect this to be further down the product journey. But that amount of power at the beginning of this car's journey is kind of nuts.
I think it's indicative of where we are with the performance nature of our brand now. You don't ever really get numb to it, but it's such a transition from the previous spec, which is a wonderful car in its own way, but just the uptick in performance is quite staggering. In terms of getting the power down, there's a lot of different elements that help us with that. So there are indeed, as you say, lots of advanced chassis control systems. We have a very clever inertial measurement system that can model how the car is behaving in any given scenario and feeds the chassis controls very detailed information about what's going on, so it can intervene early and gently to help with both your braking and your traction, as well as lateral dynamics, as we call it. The tyres are up to 325 on the rear, that helps. And the E-diff is a very powerful dynamic modifier, helps with the handling as well as putting the power down.
And you went on a development journey with Michelin to develop a compound tyre specifically for it.
Yeah.
Has that been a big contributor in order to applying that down?
Yeah, absolutely. So the tyre's phenomenal. We were first to market with the Michelin Pilot Sport S5 for DB12.
Yes.
And that gave that car huge breadth of capability and control. We further retuned it bespoke for this application with a focus on even more response. It's got more powerful lateral capacity on the front end, befitting of the sports car character. It's good, consistent, wet and dry, and it's very good for traction generally.
I'm looking forward to some hot, sticky laps now.
Vantage is a great nameplate, obviously nearly 75 years old, always been about performance. And I think this car, there was a re-emphasis on the Vantage line about what performance meant. But it comes to us as well, because really we're always about authenticity. You know, we've got a lovely DNA, a beautiful DNA, but actually performance is something that you can use to drive that DNA forward all the time.
So how closely do you work with the engineer to go, listen, I need this airflow, but you're like, well, I need it to look good. Like, how does that journey work?
You know, it's like doing Valkyrie. Valkyrie is the perfect example of where performance drove everything. But the car's amazing and beautiful in the end. So the minute you go down that thing, you can use all those requirements as a positive catalyst to make the DNA move and be exciting. So, you know, those gills on the side, they're good for design, but they're also great for performance. So it's working with those. And sometimes, as I said, sometimes you'll fight.
Sure.
But I think generally there's a real energy in the company by that performance-driven aesthetic and momentum.
So clearly Vantage, and it's not too far away from, you know, Vantage as a whole, but what is every external panel on this? This is a different
so the car is very much an evolution, driven by performance, but almost every panel is new. In terms of stance and everything, it's got a bit wider. You particularly see it in the rear wheel arch, which is just like flaring all the way. And the wheels have got an inch bigger. So this car is just a bit more aggressive, a bit more stocky on the road. The overall width of the car, actually, because of the clever mirrors that we launched on DB12, the overall width is actually slightly less than the outgoing model.
Of which the mirrors, by the way, are very trick.
Yes.
I love that. It's actually, I've never seen that design on anything else.
I believe we're the first to have done it.
When you see it though, it's greater than the sum of its parts, really, isn't it?
It's that, yeah. And obviously the other big thing on this car is the interior has taken a enormous
J-curve, massive step.
So obviously the investment that came with DB12 has helped everything that comes after it and gives this car, you know, a real interior to match where the exterior is at. Real width across the dashboard, trying to push all the door away, the console away from the driver to give you as much elbow room. And again, if you drive a car quickly on a track, you know this, actually your elbows are quite tucked in. But what you want is the feeling that you can, if you want to. It gives you a lot of confidence. You've still got the very, very nice balance of digital and physical that we showed on DB12 and comes into this car. And I think it's super important we carry that through. The
interior is actually quite a lot different compared to DB12 than I was thinking it would be. I was thinking it would be like a bit more carryover, but it's very suggestive of what the platform is about.
We had chats early on in the program about that, and we just felt this car absolutely deserved to have that level of change inside.
Have we done anything with the diffuser? Is it slightly more flared?
What we have is outboard vents and big chunky quad exhausts. So if you remember, we launched originally the car with twin, and they were they were very lightweight, but they lacked some muscle, and then basically here we've gone for 4 chunky
brilliant
quad exhaust.
It sets it off really well.